The following is a reading of an article published April 17th, 2003 at avoicefrommen.com, written by Paul Elam, and it is entitled, Fuck You, Judith Grossman. I'm reading this article in response to the critical G. I am a feminist. I have marched at the barricades, subscribed to Ms. Magazine, and knocked on many a door in support of progressive candidates committed to women's rights. The above quote contains the opening lines of a current Wall Street Journal article titled Judith Grossman, a mother, a feminist, aghast. They are the last positive things she had to say about feminism. The rest of the article was dedicated to how her son, who she understandably did not mention by name, was railroaded by his liberal arts college in New England on the basis of a sexual assault allegation that his former girlfriend decided to report years after it allegedly happened. Grossman details what happened to him with appropriate outrage. She tells us his story, which begins with him sending her a panicked text message, and walks us through how the school made a mockery of due process and the presumption of innocence. She even refers to us to Title IX and alludes to the Dear Colleague directive from the Obama administration, which instructs schools to reduce the standard of proof in sexual assault cases from the time-honored standard of reasonable doubt to the much more lax and slippery preponderance of the evidence. She complains that there was no evidence against her son at all, save the word of his ex-girlfriend. She even asks a question aloud, as though no one before her had ever bothered to ask it. Who knew that American college students are required to surrender the Bill of Rights at the campus gates? She closes her article, which simmered and seethed from start to finish in a state of bewilderment, lamenting that the pursuit of women's rights combined with politically motivated government policy is turning our schools into a, quote, snake pit of injustice, unquote. That is a very strong condemnation, coming from a fucking snake. Judith Grossman is just now finding out about one, and just one, of the many tertiary stage products of a narcissistic ideology that has run amok with her blind enabling for her entire adult life. She, rather her son, is paying the price for half a century of hatred disguised as women's rights advocacy, and so suddenly she is filled with indignation and outrage. She wonders aloud how all this could have happened. She wonders what possibly could have gone so wrong right under her nose. Fuck you, Judith Grossman. Fuck you right where you stand. Before being rattled from your solipsistic coma, there were countless other outrages happening to young men in this culture. Did you notice them? Or did you figure it was all a good thing for the sisterhood till your baby boy wound up with his entire future on the line in a system that was designed by those of your ilk to chew him up and spit him out? Have you noticed the other students, Judith? Or more accurately, have you noticed how many of them are male? Your son is the minority now, as more and more young men are falling from the ranks of education, thanks to your feminism. But I'm betting, Judith, that even if you did notice, you didn't give a damn. Not as long as your boy was getting his degree, right? That's the problem with your remarkably successful campaign of wanton self-interest. It feels great until the bill comes due. Unfortunately for your son, Mommy is not the one that has to cough up the tab. He is, and the world you built is not done with him yet. I take it that he's not married yet. Chances are he will be, and if that's the case, he will also get another dose of your medicine, if and when he ends up in family court, stripped of his rights and under an axe that will make his school's honor court look like a vacation in the Bahamas. He'll have you to thank for it, just like so many other sons of single mothers and feminists who have exploited chivalry and pushed for misandric treatment of men in the judicial system. And if it happens, if they take his home, his children, his income, his freedom, and leave him to an impoverished life, as they have so many other sons of women like you, you'll be back at the Wall Street Journal, moaning and gnashing teeth and shouting into a compassionless void about what has happened to your son. No one will care, Judith. The world will grease its gears with his guts and keep on humming along like he was never even there. Your only hope now, if it is indeed not too late, is to vociferously reject the ideology you embraced as long as it served your selfish needs. Your only redemption is to attack it with all the might you have at your disposal and shine the light on every hypocrisy you have ever fostered, every lie you have ever told, and every self-serving agenda you once lauded as the answer for humanity. And you need to do it till your dying breath. I get the distinct feeling that you won't, however. I think all that's happened here is that you've had your little entitled hissy fit because Junior got bent over by the system you helped push on the world around you. Once he's in the clear, and the pieces of his nearly destroyed life have been put back together, I'm thinking you'll have your unseeing eyes right back on the pages of Ms. magazine, spending the remainder of your disgust on patriarchy or bemoaning a fabricated rape culture, and ignoring the rape hysteria that almost put an end to your son's future. I'm betting you'll be back to supporting those progressive candidates that were the architects of your son's near destruction. I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first or last time. If so, I'm sure many people who are actually waking up to the destruction of feminism will be happy to see it. I know I will. But until then, as I've already said, fuck you. This has been a reading of Fuck You, Judith Grossman, published at A Voice for Men on April 17th, 2013. Now, my feelings. I'm actually quite in agreement with Paul Elam, and in some serious, maybe not disagreement, but skepticism with the Critical G's title of his video, of his reading of this, as a feminist having seen the light. I really don't think she has. Everything in her article, I mean, you look at it and, well, I'm just going to quote a comment that I made on it at Reddit, and maybe you'll see what I mean. Here we go. I said, I love this bit, given the feminist agitprop regarding the issue. Quote, there was no preliminary inquiry on the part of anyone at the school into these accusations about behavior alleged to have taken place a few years earlier. No consideration of the possibility that jealousy or revenge might be motivating a spurned young ex-lover to lash out. Unquote. Well, why would there be? Women almost never lie about rape. The percentage is so tiny as to be insignificant, no more than a drop in the big 5-gallon bucket of real rapes run rampant. In fact, even suggesting that a woman might lie about it makes you a rape apologist. Suggesting that motivations exist that might lead to a woman to lie about rape, like jealousy, revenge, personal gain, an alibi. That's a crime against all women everywhere. Duh. Quoting her again, worst of all, my son would not be afforded a presumption of innocence. Unquote. Well, why would he be? Women almost never lie about rape. And since they almost never lie about it, like literally 1 in 500 cases according to Enliven, removing altogether the presumption of innocence, reversing the burden of proof, or even just conviction upon accusation are perfectly in keeping with Blackstone's formulation. Better 10 guilty men go free than 1 innocent man be unjustly condemned? We're talking 500 guilty to 1 innocent here. I can't believe this woman has the gall to call herself a feminist while engaging in this rape apologia. The labia traitor. Somebody mentioned that I'm not usually quite so snarky and unpleasant, and I will admit that this kind of thing really bothers me, and I replied to him, it's one thing to have boys and allow that to help motivate you toward advocating fairness. Women who don't have sons, or who do have sons and simply go along with the status quo out of laziness or ignorance, I don't have a major problem with them. It's another thing to spend 30 years advocating against fairness toward males, and then when your life's work bites one of your own in the ass, you bemoan the unfairness of the system and claim you never saw it coming. I'm sorry. I have sympathy for her son, not so much for her, especially since if the spurned girlfriend had been her daughter and the accused some other woman's boy, she'd almost certainly not have been writing about the system's fundamental unfairness. And I don't think she's taken the red pill at all. Her son is an extension of her. She wrote this article because she's been injured through him, not because she's taken a U-turn toward objectivity. Now, I remember reading, I don't know how long ago, a year ago maybe, an account written by another feminist who had been active for decades. And her son was falsely accused of rape by a mentally ill woman who he had actually befriended and tried to help. And he was railroaded by the system. He was, she realized at that point that, his due process rights, and this is not something that's just in college cases. I mean, there have been 40 years of reform laws as far as rape law goes, sexual assault law, that really make the procedures involved in prosecuting and defending oneself from a sexual assault charge completely different. Completely, absolutely, utterly different from that involved in any other crime. And the one thing that set that article apart from this article was this article at the Wall Street Journal, this recent Judith Grossman article, seems to be all about how could the system do this to my son and me? And the previous article, and I'm going to link to it if I can find it in the low bar, had a very distinct tone of, oh my God, what have we done? Not what have you done or what are you doing, or, how can the system be so unfair to me and my child? But what have we done? And that is the voice of someone who is sincerely rethinking their worldview and sincerely considering the consequences of their actions. Now, this is something that I have discussed quite a bit with Dean Esme because he's an extremely optimistic guy, and I know that there are a lot of people on the men's rights subreddit and elsewhere who are extremely optimistic, and there is a lot of optimism. I mean, as far as people are actually allowing themselves now to think the forbidden thoughts and to consider all of the ideas that they were not allowed or they didn't give themselves permission to consider before because it wasn't politically correct and it was anti-woman and misogynist and all of these labels that get attached to it. But part of the reason that we are getting mainstream traction, I'm almost positive, is that there are enough women out there, right, who have had male loved ones be damaged by this. And when I look at the difference between those two articles, the Judith Grossman and the other feminist who was just like, how could we have orchestrated all of this? What were we thinking? I see much more along the lines of... I see a lot more Judith Grossmans out there who are feeling personally victimized, whether they are the second wife of a man who's being gouged for alimony, or whether they are the grandmother of a grandchild that they are no longer allowed to see because the father has been alienated, or whether they are the mother of a man who's been unjustly imprisoned because he lost his job and couldn't keep up with the child support, or a mother or a sister whose whose male loved one has been falsely accused of something and is just being completely destroyed by the system. All of these women have the same sense of grievance, right? The same sense of persecution and the same sense of being victimized. That is what led women to embrace feminism, right? It's just they are being victimized through their male loved ones. And so I don't see that as having something, as being something that is fundamentally shifted in the female consciousness. And as far as I'm concerned, if the female consciousness does not change, right, if it does not measurably, meaningfully shift toward an actual set of principles, basing one's sense of right and wrong on principles rather than on what feels right to me at a given moment, I really don't see that that's any kind of meaningful change in how anybody feels, at least in how women feel. And women are the ones who give people permission to feel things. So I see this as maybe we've gotten to the point where enough women have been personally harmed by the sort of the friendly fire, right? Enough women have been fragged by feminists, right? That women are starting to say, okay, this is enough, right? What are we doing? And then men feel like they're allowed to think, okay, so what are we doing? But I don't see this as a fundamental shift in anything. I don't see it as. I see this as a battle we are going to have to continue to fight. And I think that, honestly, if this is any indication, there will be a 20% improvement, and then that will be that. And then we will incrementally creep back. We will have the scope creep start again, and then we will fight, and women will actually realize that they're being victimized when their men are victimized as well, and everybody will fight back, and there'll be a pushback. But I don't see feminism as a pendulum. I don't see any of this as a pendulum. I see feminism, I see femaleness as an engine that has been pushing in one direction all through history, and it's only the fact that there is no external threat of warfare, there's no external threat of scarcity and poverty and starvation, and there's no external threat of danger from wild animals and the vagaries of the universe and earthquakes and tsunamis and all of this stuff, right? And there's no external threat of death on the job, and there's all of these things have been removed, and once they were removed, the engine was able to move forward. This is not a pendulum. It's an engine. And it's been chugging along all through history. And it was external things, not men. It was external things that held it back. And I don't see that one woman saying, oh, my son became collateral damage, so now I care about my son and this one issue. And I'm not going to own any accountability or responsibility for what happened, right? I'm not going to actually say I was a feminist. No, I'm going to continue to say I am a feminist. And it's absurd. It's lip service. It's bullshit. It's completely self-serving and self-interested, and I don't see it as anything hopeful. So, yeah, there you go. Anyhow, a couple of things that I just wanted to let you guys know about. I won't be probably making any longish videos for the next little while, maybe 3 weeks or so. I am doing that interview with Stefan Molyneux and Warren Farrell on the 22nd, and that's going to be, should be very, very interesting and fun. And I've talked to Warren Farrell before, and he's just like the sweetest guy ever, and just really, really nice and easy to talk to. So I'm really looking forward to that. I did do the interview on my own with Stefan Molyneux, and that should be up. I'm not sure when. They said they would let me know. And in about a week and a half or so, I will be heading out to New York State, where I will be giving a presentation. I've been invited to present at the New York State Libertarian Party's annual convention. And I will be discussing the impact of radical feminist theory, family law, social work, domestic violence policy, all of that. And hopefully I will be able to make some of those libertarians a little bit more aware of how the civil liberties of men have been eroded through essentially what essentially is communist or socialist policy that is engendered by feminist theory. So I'm looking forward to that. And also, for those of you who are interested, I have actually officially been invited just a few days ago, maybe 5 days ago, onto the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And I've talked back and forth a little bit with his talent booking agent. Unfortunately, he's on the road at the moment, and I have prior commitments that I have to deal with, up to the beginning of May. So we're hoping that we can do this sometime in the month of May. And Joe he's a little busy right now. He's doing the MMA color commentary thing. He's doing a stand-up tour right now. And he also, I guess, just signed a contract to do a new television show. So he's got a full plate. And between the two of us, I hope we can figure out our schedules enough to be able to actually do this and fly me down and have me be in the studio with him and Brian Redban. So, which should be fun, because honestly, Joe seems like the kind of guy who really speaks his mind and is not afraid to say something that's a little bit maybe offensive or politically incorrect. And I totally seem to get along with those kinds of guys better than any other. So, because I'm never afraid of the shit that comes out of my mouth with guys like that. So, hopefully we'll be able to make that happen. I'm hoping that that will happen sometime in May, although maybe not too soon, because I'm not really a big fan of traveling, and I really don't want to get off a plane and then get right back on one. So, there you go. And another thing that I wanted to note and discuss as far as what's been going on lately is the University of Toronto stuff. And, this is sort of in keeping with this, the first part of this video, wherein I would categorize what Judith Grossman is going through as reaping what you have sown. And I would also categorize what the woman that we have come to know as Big Red, she's really reaping what she has sown. I've watched a lot of footage of those protests and of her in particular. And a funny thing is that she was fine sort of blending into the background and just being one of the crowd until she realized that cameras were pointed at her. And the moment she realized that there were cameras pointed at her, she really, really put it on. She hammed it up. She made a point of being as aggressive and in your face and nasty and interrupty and just I would even say cruel. I mean, how could she possibly, when somebody says, why don't you go check the gravestones of all the men who have committed suicide, young men who have committed suicide, and she starts singing Cry Me a River. And I'm thinking, how does she even know that this person is not the father of somebody who committed suicide? And how would she have felt about that? She doesn't care, because she's performing for a camera. So, I look at that, and I look at the her lament to David Futrell, like sort of a fire engine red-haired Princess Leia. Help me, man boobs, you're my only hope. Right? What? This is what gets me. You're tough enough to scream in people's faces. You're tough enough to like jab your finger at them. You're tough enough to just shriek, shut the fuck up, over and over and over again, right? And call people names and just fucking make it impossible for them to state their position, right? And you're tough enough to play tough guy in a mob, right? In a mob of people with sticks and placards, and you're all just like chanting and hollering and banging and pulling fire alarms and all of that shit, right? You are one tough fucking broad, right? And then the moment that some people comment on a YouTube video of you doing that, yeah, if we had real equality, somebody would have punched that woman in the face, right? And all of a sudden, you are terrified, terrorized, threatened, right? This is what gets me. I watched a news story. It was actually an extremely balanced news story, and I will link it in the low bar. I think it was called The Inside Story, from a Toronto news station. And they said that because of the outing of some of the feminists who were at the Warren Farrell protest back in November, women and feminists on the U of T campus are afraid. And I'm thinking to myself, what's happened to any of those women? Like, realistically, what's happened to them? I mean, they've received trolling comments, they've received criticism online. A lot of the stuff that Man Boobs, David Futrell, posted on his blog, screenshots of it. The most harsh thing I think I saw, as far as being, intimidating or threatening or really, really angry, was, I can only think, a comment by a feminist, because the person who made it said, you are giving feminism a bad name and you are undermining feminists by doing what you do and behaving the way you behave. And so, I mean, like, literally the most vitriolic comment that Futrell found to highlight on his blog was a comment from a feminist. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, you deserve to be raped. You should be raped. Whatever, go die in a fire. Go, I hope you get run over by a bus. Go shove a dead porcupine up your ass. Blah, 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 blah. Show us your tits. Whatever. Whatever. See, there's this little X. It's right in the corner here. Right here. Right? And you can click on that and make it all go away. It is not the same thing as trying to go about your business in the real world and being faced with 30 or 40 people banging and hollering and screaming at you. It is not the same thing as being a gay man and a woman having their obligations, right? These are obligations. They said they would come and do a presentation. They went to do a presentation as part of their either their contract with Cafe or as part of their advocacy for these issues, right? As part of their conscience. And so a gay man and a woman go to give a talk, and they can't do that reasonably because of the noise and the intimidation and blah, 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 and all of that, and the pulling of the fire alarm and everything, right? All of the disruption. And you can't ignore it. Catherine Young and Paul Nathanson couldn't click an X and make all that go away, right? But Big Red can. And so can Emma and Vanya and all of these other protesters who've been outed, right? They can click on an X and make it go away. And frankly, if nothing's happened to that tongue-pierced, lisping freaking Vanya, whatever her name is, right? The you are fucking scum girl, right? If nothing's actually happened to her, I can't imagine anything's going to happen to Big Red in real life. I honestly can't, right? If nobody punched her in the face at that event, I can't imagine anybody's ever going to freaking jump out of the bushes and say, you bitch, and punch her in the face. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't imagine that happening. And frankly, talking about how women on the U of T campus or feminists on the U of T campus are afraid, they're afraid. Not they're in danger. They're afraid, right? Well, so what? Women are the safest demographic in society from violence. That includes children, right? Men are at the highest liability of all demographics, right? 3/4 of victims of violence, right? And I would say probably even more than that because violent victimization of men is underreported. So you're looking at the demographic that is most at risk, right, are less afraid of violence than the one that is least at risk. And then you even go so far as to look at men who have already been victimized by violence, right? So you have men who have been mugged, who have been rolled, who have been, mobbed, who have been robbed, who have been assaulted, who have been beaten up, who have been, raped, right? They've been victimized by violence. And they still report, on average, being less afraid of violence as women who have never been victimized by violence, right? So I'm not really prepared to trust women's feelings on this. I'm really not. Women's feelings of fear have nothing to do with their actual risk. Nothing. The opposite. It's inversely proportional, right? The safer women are, the more afraid they feel. This is what it seems like to me. And so, honestly, be as scared as you want, U of T feminists, but just understand that that doesn't reflect reality, and people are waking up to that. And given that, you might want to get yourself a pair, maybe two, maybe even a whole week's worth, if you only do laundry once a week, of big girl pants. So I guess that's all I have to say for today. Like I said, probably going to be a while before I post another video. And I really enjoyed that article by Paul Elam about Judith Grossman. And I find myself agreeing with most of it. And so I wanted to share it with all of you. And because I know that not all of you read A Voice for Men. So there you go. And I'm going to hopefully find all the links I need to leave in the low bar. And I will see you all later. And hi, Critical G. And bye.